whilst we're both working. Okay, so you should be in a nice quiet room, as much as you can when you're at home. You should have the image out in front of you on your computer or printed out, whatever's best for you. It's been gridded up for you, and you should be transferring the image across and now applying your paint or your colour pencil to it. If you start with like an eye or something like that, something really detailed, and then gradually, if you run out of time, well, that ends up taking you ages. If everything else was quite loose, it would still look like an accomplished, finished painting. Whereas if you start painting the beard really realistically and then you run out of time, you can't paint all of the rest just roughly and have the beard really done well. So I would always work on an eye first, so that if I ran out of time, I could just do the rest loose and it wouldn't, I could leave it like that and it would be okay. Having said that, I'm going to go into the eye in a bit more detail now. So I need to put in some more highlights and some more depth, and obviously finish up the top and the backgrounds. There's still lots to do within this painting itself. It's got a base layer on it, and when we paint, we would always build up on top of layers. It's not just like you fill in gaps and then you leave it alone. We can always build on top of paint. It's called glazing, where you layer one paint over the top of the other, one colour over the top of the other, and it comes through, building up those layers. The reason why we do artist copies is so we get a really good understanding of what colours they use and the way that they put their brush marks down, the direction of the brush marks, the shape of things that they draw. There's loads we can learn from doing these pastiches. Pastiche is like a replica, but you're adding your own kind of flair to it. So I'm not copying every mark exactly. I'm adding my own artistic approach to it as well. You could just do a squiggle on the page and say, I added my own artistic approach to it, but you know what I mean. It's not an exact copy. Taking inspiration from it. Ideally, what you would do as a GCSE student, or moving this forward, is you take a series of photographs yourself, of yourself or maybe of somebody else, and you would do this type of painting, but of you rather than of Matisse. So now I can see he's got quite a lot of white there. It's a really good observational exercise as well. So I'm constantly looking and checking and examining. And that is all good practice within art, looking closely. Some people will see that whole patch as just green and colour the whole thing in green. And some people will look more closely and see that there's actually more going on there than you might think. And that is the key, really, is looking. I should have rubbed out my grid. I'm being lazy. I should call my YouTube channel The Lazy Artist. And acrylic paint's a really good one to use for this type of painting. If any of you have got some acrylic paint at home and you wanted to try it out at home, it's a good time to experiment and explore how that works for you at home. Sometimes people get bought these little tubes for Christmas and they don't really know what to do with them. And this would be the perfect kind of task to explore those and see how you get on with them. If you are using acrylic paint, make sure that you add a bit of water to them, and don't just lay them on. Oh, perfect. Well done. Don't just lay them on super thick onto the page. So if you are trying this with acrylic paint, there is quite a lot of thick paint on this piece. Having said that Matisse has created, he's used it very thick, which is called it impasto, where he's laid it on really thickly. But I would advise you in the early stages of using acrylic paint is to thin it down and build it up in small layers, how I am, because you can then cover over things and repair things easier than if you've laid it on really thick. You then got a big old blob on your page, and it's going to be difficult to repair that if anything goes wrong. Right, I seem to have put a really light colour in the background. I guess I was just putting down a base at that stage. So I'm going to go in now with a much darker colour because it's almost black next to him there behind his neck. It's not black. It is brown. Mixing a bit of black in with your brown, make it darker for you, or a bit of blue in with your brown. And there's actually some blue underneath this brown, so I should have done a layer of blue first, but never mind. I might do a bit of dry brush over the top or something. I'm going to take that round his ear because he seems to have done that. Making this thick brown. Adding the opposite colour to your main colour, whatever colour you're using, will just mute it a bit. It will just take it back a bit so it's not as bright. It will dull it down. So my blue is much brighter than that, but having put some browny orange with it, orange is obviously opposite blue. Now you've done your colour theory work, you know that. And that's what really is in this task as well. There's lots of thinking about colour, lots of colour mixing. I'm just trying to mimic some of those shapes and those directions of Matisse's brushwork there, and his background is very loose, his background. Putting that blue behind this side of the face really accentuates this side of the face because it's in the sunlight or in the light, and there's lots of peach tones and orangey tones, so that's where your complementary colours are coming in. He's been very clever in putting that big strong blue behind here because you can see all these peach tones really popping forward. So when we say, oh, put a complementary colour in the background, it doesn't have to be as obvious as you might think. My paint is way too watery. Can be just quite a subtle thing. You wouldn't necessarily think, oh, his face is orange. You wouldn't look at that and think his face is orange. But there are lots of peach tones in that side of the face. And then this side of the face, we've got much cooler tones, more greens and blues. Just adding lighter tones to this side of the face because I was working on it and it was getting a bit muddy. Muddy is when your colours all start to merge into one and they become nothing in anything in particular. They just all blur into one colour, and lots of parts of this painting have got really distinct differences between each other, and some of them just blend into each other, and that side of the face is quite a strong light highlighted area there. So you can see how when you submit me a piece of work and I say spend more time on it or develop it further, you can see how at the start of this lesson when I was doing this particular painting, you might have looked at it and thought, well, it's done, it's finished. And I've now spent a bit more time on it, and I've worked into it. Obviously, I'm finishing off the background, but I've worked into a bit more of the face and built upon it and refined it. And it's become stronger. And there's that fine line between working on it and making it stronger and more refined to this word which is overworking it. And overworking it is where an artist gets to the point where they've refined it, they've made it better, they've made it stronger, and then they've just tipped over the edge and done too much to it. And it's gone wrong, or it's spoilt it, or it was unnecessary what they added, they didn't need to add any more. And again, that is an artist's job, to work out when to stop fiddling with it, when to leave it alone, and also when to add more to it. And I think for some of you, you'll do a piece of work and submit it, and I'll more often than not say, great, add darker tones. So pushing harder with your pencil, or adding depth to it by adding a darker colour. So I'm going to add value to this now by refining the eyes and adding more darker tones and highlights as well to balance it out. Right, so I've got a thinner brush now, and I'm going to just do some finer brush work, and I'm going to be using my brush in a variety of different ways. So I'm going to be using my brush using thin lines and thick lines, and a combination of the two as well. I'm going to be exploring my own lines. These aren't necessarily in the painting that I'm working from. This is now my own artistic style, and I'm going to add that in. Being careful at this stage not just to go around everything in black. That's not what we're seeing here. We're seeing different shades of brown around the edges of things. Right, I hope this is useful, and you can see sort of how I go about doing these paintings. And you can obviously watch this tutorial on YouTube a bit later. I'll pop it on there after, so you can work on this on the weekend if you've got some time, but we're not doing anything right now, so you might want to dedicate a bit of time to this painting, and you can paint along with the tutorial in your own time. There's definitely some things in this one that's not right, but like I say, we can just say it's artistic flair. And we're having a really good try at it. So well done. If you're uncertain or you're unsure, you're finding it hard, just do the eye. You've got the whole thing drawn out, but focus in on drawing the eye. But bit by bit, you'll get there. I'm sure of it.